Hi, everyone, and welcome to Weekly Homilies with Father Mark Soslenko, pastor of Saints Isidore and Maria Parish in Glastonbury, Connecticut, part of the Catholic Archdiocese of Hartford. I'm Carol Vassar, Parish Director of Communications, and you are listening to episode 31 for Season 5 for the 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time, September 11th, 2022. Our Gospel reading is from Luke chapter 15, verses 1 through 10. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them he addressed this parable. "What man among you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, would not leave the 99 in the desert and go after the lost one until he finds it? And when he does find it, he sets it on his shoulders with great joy, and upon his arrival home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and says to them, 'Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you, in just the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who have no need of repentance. Or what woman, having 10 coins and losing one, would not light a lamp and sweep the house, searching carefully until she finds it? And when she does find it, she calls together her friends and neighbors and says to them, 'Rejoice with me, because I have found the coin that I lost.' In just the same way, I tell you, there will be rejoicing among the angels of God over one sinner who repents." The Gospel of the Lord.
From the very beginning of time, humanity has struggled with both understanding who God really is and what the highest good that can be pursued by a human being. Who God really is and what the highest good to be pursued really is. We see this going back even to the days of the Israelites wandering in the desert, initially trusting that God was going to lead them to the promised land and this journey of life, but getting very disillusioned along the way because life got difficult and things weren't going as easily as they perhaps expected from the beginning. And so they wandered from God. And they fabricated this molten calf. And a molten calf is something that is crafted by the individual themselves. It's made out of melted metals and becomes the image of what the person desires it to be. And they drifted from a worship of God to the worship of this molten calf. We struggle with those same molten calves in our life. And the question is not whether we have them, but what are they? Because every human being struggles with their relationship with God and struggles with an understanding of what really is good. And we find ourselves often on the fence, taking more control over our lives than perhaps is really our due, and forgetting that we're really on this life journey with God and not alone. And what's curious about these molten calves is because they're things that we create. Initially, we enjoy them. They are things that entertain us. They are things that we want, that we have a hard time letting go of. We have a hard time moving away from them. And they are things that on the surface may not at first seem bad. They can be found in routines or schedules that I just find myself falling into that drift me away from giving due honor and glory to God. It can be something like fear, which at the first glance may seem justified. But when our fears captivate us, they in essence replace God with our fears. control. We all want to have control over our lives, but when we strive to control things so much that maintaining control becomes the thing that we desire more than giving our life over to God and the journey He desires to carry us on, that control can become a god. Worldly pleasures, worldly enticements, passions. Each one of us, if we're honest with ourselves, knows what can get in the way of our relationship with God. If we're really honest about that ourselves, we can identify those things that get in between myself and God. And we have to understand, in order to grow in the spiritual life, what is preventing us, because in thinking that we are found, we can actually be very lost. You know, there's an old story. It comes from a body of Hasidic literature, which is really reflective of the ancient Jewish spiritual masters who really engulfed themselves in a contemplative spirituality. And the story is about a father and a son who are journeying in a wagon from one town to another that was in a far distant land that took several days to travel. And as they journeyed in this wagon, they were going down this road, and the son saw acres upon acres of very lush, beautiful blueberry bushes. And so he begged his father, "Father, can we stop so I can get out and pick some blueberries?" And so the father, looking kindly upon his son, says, "Yes, go out and pick some blueberries, but we have to get where we're going. We have to get there soon. So don't tarry too long, because we have to get along on our way." But the son was getting so engulfed in picking these blueberries and so happy about all of the abundance that he was able to gather. And the father kept encouraging him, "Come on, we have to get going." But the son was persistent and remained picking his blueberries. And the father thought to himself, "I love my son. I don't want to deprive him of this pleasure, even though he's being somewhat stubborn and childish." So he said to the son, he said, "I have to move along on this journey. We do have to get going, but you can stay and pick those blueberries for a little while longer, but not too long. And I'm going to journey up the road, but I'm going to go very slow. And every once in a while, as you're picking those blueberries, just cry out, 'Father, Father,' and I will hear your voice and I will respond." And so the son continued to pick those blueberries. And the father said, "When it comes time that you don't hear my voice any longer, know that you are lost. And do all you can to run and find me. Know that you are lost." The father, in all his compassion, wasn't going to journey too far away. It was the son who got more and more into the picking of blueberries, who wandered himself further away from his father than he even thought. And that's what happens when we begin to honor a God other than the one true eternal God. We can find ourselves engulfed in pleasure. We can even feel some measure of happiness. But sometimes, without even realizing it, we're very lost, because we can no longer hear God saying, "I am here. Come this way," because we've wandered so far away. It's not that God has moved, we did. And so the point of this story is obvious. We have to consistently and always cry out for our Father. You know, when life gets difficult, we can't see God's hand, the immediacy of what's going on. Cry out, Father, Father. When I get lost and confused, cry out, Father, Father. When I'm involved in routines that draw me away from what I want to be ultimately doing, cry out, Father, Father. So never stop calling out for God. Always make sure you can hear his voice saying, I am here. Because it's okay to stop and pick the blueberries. It's okay to get involved in the stuff of life, as long as it doesn't distract us so much that we no longer hear God saying, I am here. And for us who gather here so often, when we stop hearing God's voice bounding through the gift of the Eucharist, then we know that something is really wrong and we have lost our way most assuredly. So we all have an opportunity to identify our molten calves of what can so easily replace us from this vibrant, loving connection we have with our God. Because ultimately, and we know this to be true, we are meant to be on that wagon with God, with him guiding us through our life, not manufacturing it on our own, but going in accord with his will and what he desires for us and where he wants to bring us. That is the mystery of faith. May we truly understand God's love for us and his desire to have us back in the fold.
Father Mark Sislenko is the pastor of Saints Isidore and Maria Parish in Glastonbury, Connecticut. Learn more about our parish community at isidoreandmaria.org and follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our music comes free of charge from Blue Dot Sessions in Fall River, Massachusetts. I'm Carol Vassar. Thanks for listening.